And celebrated annually in March, Women's History Month honors the vital contributions, achievements, and sacrifices of women in American history. One of the first notable advocates for women was Abigail Adams, the wife of the second U.S. President John Adams, hailed for her now famous admonition that the Founding Fathers, quote, remember the ladies in their new laws. Adams is just one First Lady highlighted in a new project titled In Pursuit, where contributors share important lessons they've learned from former presidents and the women beside them in an effort to better understand the American experiment. Joining me now on set, CEO of In Pursuit, Colleen Shogan. She's a former U.S. archivist and was the first woman in American history to lead the National Archives and Records Administration before she was ultimately fired by President Trump in February of last year. So a trailblazer herself sitting here on set with me. I wonder if we can dig in a little bit to the essay that is at the heart of this. We all, I think, were told that Abigail Adams had the admonition of remember the ladies. But I think what's so fascinating and what you unpack in this letter is that this was actually a very before its time criticism of patriarchy and gender norms, many of which still govern society today, unfortunately. So can you talk about charting this admonition and this knocking down of patriarchy from some of the earliest people to be founders of this country?
Absolutely. I mean, Abigail Adams is arguing that the revolution is going on in the United States. She's writing this letter in 1776 at the end of March. And she says, well, how are we advocating for liberty in government, but we are not advocating for liberty in our own private lives, in our family? And so she's asking John Adams in the future to remember the ladies, because at that point in time in American history, under English common law, it's called coverture, married women have absolutely no rights. They don't have any rights to property. If they do work, their wages belong to their husbands. They belong to their husbands, as you imply, as property. So there's no individuality, no liberty whatsoever within the family.
So impactful, too, to see the wife of a president making that kind of an argument, especially at the early point in history that she did. I would still argue we've got a long way to go in combating patriarchy, which is a different conversation. But I think the conversation that I've been so fascinated and lucky to have with you in the past is the ways in which these women who stand next to the most powerful men on earth are in fact so powerful themselves, and yet history sometimes casts them aside. And I wonder, as we celebrate this Women's History Month on the 250th anniversary of this country, the ways that we can better flesh out these powerful people who stood next to presidents.
That's exactly what we're doing with In Pursuit. First ladies are a perfect example, with Abigail Adams leading the way. I don't know about you, but whenever I studied American history, particularly in high school, these women were left out of the picture. You didn't spend a lesson on the influence of first ladies. And even if you were able to dive deeply into one particular administration or presidency, the first lady might have been mentioned. Maybe you heard about or learned a little bit about Eleanor Roosevelt or Jackie Kennedy. But the rest of these women are simply, like you said, not even maybe footnotes in history. But it turns out there's a lot we can learn from them. There's a lot of informal mechanisms of power. And even before these women could vote, before they could hold office, before there was any formal influence, they were exercising persuasion and really setting the national conversation in many instances.
I absolutely agree. And I think that it is a reminder of the patriarchy that I think still governs some of our history record keeping, that these women are footnotes at best. And I think now a reexamination of them through the project that you're doing and others is just so essential. And as someone who also writes a first draft of history, right, as a reporter, the thing I've been thinking about through Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, Melania Trump, modern day first ladies, is the role that they are playing. And if social media makes us any more aware of the impact that they can have. I mean, I look at someone like Melania Trump, who has really taken herself out of the limelight of the presidency, pops up every now and again to advocate for things like education. She did a recent forum yesterday at the White House where she was, I think, quite notably and virally online walking next to an AI robot. I mean, that was kind of crazy. But can you talk about the role that she is playing right now, the legacy that she's building in real time? it's a big contrast, I think, for me, from a Hillary Clinton or a Michelle Obama.
Well, with modern first ladies, they're playing in two different arenas.
Yes.
As you said, they're very public. Mrs. Trump having this press conference with that visual yesterday, certainly striking. But what we don't really know is how much influence she's having on President Trump, on her husband, until historians are able to look back at the records. And that's once again why places like the National Archives are so incredibly important, so we can write that correct first draft of history. In previous presidencies, we know that that first draft of history wasn't written correctly because first ladies and others were simply left out of the picture. But hopefully in the future, that won't be the case, and we'll have more accurate depictions of administrations and histories right out of the gate.
And this is yet another reason that we can put in our long list of why record keeping and actually complying with archival rules is so important for this administration, for other administrations. It takes us back to, at the very beginning, why it's problematic that they were using signal chats, for example, because those are disappearing messages. And yet, I digress from that. This was a beautiful, beautiful conversation for Women's History Month. You can follow the In Pursuit series on Substack at inpursuit.org. You can do it at both of those places. Former U.S. archivist and CEO of In Pursuit, Colleen Shogan. Thank you. I've been fascinated by this series.
Thank you,
It was great
Allie.
to get to talk to you.